Hi, and we are joined by the very fabulous Danielle Prosser with us today. I have been approaching Danielle for some time now to get her to speak at one of my events. She's been recommended to me by so many people. And finally, I got her.
Thank you, Andrea. That's lovely.
Talk about what it was that we could get you to present on. And I think one of the most amazing things, or one of the things that often slips through the cracks between TA and HR partnering, is the onboarding process and the whole way that we welcome people into the organisation and have them feel safe, particularly through those probation periods where you feel like you're particularly on show. And that's going to cover today. So folks, comments, questions in the chat, and I'm going to hand over to you for this brilliant workshop. We'll see you in an hour.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrea. I might just share my desktop here, making sure that everybody can see that. Can I get a comment or a nod if people can see my presentation?
Just yet. So hit your, down the bottom, the share screen.
Yes.
And then you want to share your entire screen. We had a problem with this morning, and I ended up driving it for the person, which was a complete disaster.
Right, I think I'm...
No, we still can't see it. Up here it comes. Terrific.
Excellent. Oh, there it comes. All right, we can see that okay? Can I just get a yes, we can see that okay?
Screen.
Can see browser, nothing else. Okay.
The browser, yeah, and you're sharing a Remo screen. So
okay.
When you hit share screen, it should then have your presentation there, and you hit the browser.
Okay, won't be a moment.
Sorry, the presentation.
Presentation. Okay, now it doesn't seem to be working my end, Andrea.
Michelle's telling me to just make a start, and she's going to go on and sort the presentation out. So perhaps start with an introduction of who you are and what you do, while we just quickly sort this out in the back end.
No problem. Did you need me to share my presentation with you, Andrea?
Michelle? That would be good. Yes, if you could just quickly email it.
I will.
You've got my email address?
Yes. I'll shoot it across now.
Shoot it across. Michelle will sort it out in the background, and then we can hear all about how fabulous you are when we sort the tech out in the background.
Hey, we're getting better with all of this tech stuff, but bear with me.
It's such a brilliant presentation, but it's a startup to a certain extent. So, you know, we've been using it since pretty much from the beginning, but there are still things they're trying to iron out. So after this 2-day event, we have a lot more feedback to give them.
I'll have some feedback for them, no problem.
Yeah. So while everyone's doing that, in the chat, could you please talk about how you ensure you look after your people through the onboarding process to ensure that they feel safe and cared for? And it might also be good to know whether HR or TA are in charge of it, or is it falling through your cracks? Here we go. So Sandra's saying a little bit of both. TA does the offer through onboarding. And then once the person arrives, day one, and from onboarding over to HR ops. James Telfer, Onboarding and CSL, is managed by HR Ops. This HR Ops is becoming a very strong part of HR as well. And Rebecca Horton, one of our previous, in fact, this event last year talked about the rise of TA and HR Ops. Once an employee starts, TA has no contact with the new starter. Similar to Sandra, a TA handoff. Isn't that funny? When I was back in the day, when I was doing recruitment, golly, I had coffees with them for ages, and knew when they were unhappy with their managers and got terribly involved. But it took up a lot of time when I was supposed to be doing a lot of TA work as well. So, Janelle, have you sent the presentation?
Yeah. I have. It's definitely in my sent box there. So hopefully it's on its way to Michelle.
All right. Michelle's got it. She's on it. So why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself? And
no problem. Excellent. Thank you. Fantastic. Well, look, thanks for having me today. A little bit about me and what sits in my backpack. I've been in HR or talent roles for probably the last 15 years. And was really fortunate to play a role for a global dominant retailer being IKEA. So I spent about 10 years at IKEA in numerous talent and HR roles. So what I've done is really looked at how can I support our talent community with contemporary thinking, but also some of the topics that I'm really passionate about as a conversation starter, to see how we can get movements happening both in talent acquisition and the conversation between TA and HR. So I'm currently directing operations of an employee experience company. So I'm working with organizations to solve their people problems and really looking at transforming that people experience through human connection. So that's a little bit about me. Please feel free to call me Dee and reach out to me after the event. Happy to keep having conversations on these topics. But yeah, really excited to get into this particular topic, all about psychological safety in the onboarding experience. So hopefully my presentation is ready to go.
Quick moment.
Hello, Andrea, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, is my presentation there or?
Yes, it is, and she's just trying to share it.
Okay.
In the chat.
That's okay, no problem.
All right. It's not showing up, Michelle. So we've got Michelle as a host, and she's trying to share the presentation.
Okay.
So Michelle, I think I have to invite you to the stage. I'll turn my camera on so people can see that I'm actually trying to do something in the background.
Okay, great, excellent.
And that'll make you feel a bit happier. So some of the comments that are going on in the chat here, and one of them that I actually talked about was, you know, it was me that they were safe with, because they talked to me about the whole process relationship was with me. HR was sort of the scary beast to them, and their hiring manager was not that they felt comfortable with. So if they were struggling, if they didn't know what to do, sometimes if they even wanted to know how to use the printer, it was like, hey, Andrea, come and, you know, help me out.
Those little things.
And Sally Cheng is saying she usually gives a courtesy call to the candidate, usually a week and 3 months in part of the process, but it's not. But I also, you know, had the cup of coffee, so I could that they work with in the same job role and actually say, okay, who will you hire? Who would you hire? Who will we reach out? If you refer them, a referral bonus, because I financial services in London, and it was really hard to do. Lara Osborne saying day one on a coffee lunch. Michelle, do you want to share it with me? And I'll.
No, it's not helpful because I'm on chat with the help desk.
She's on chat with the help desk. We are having a problem.
What? I can probably get rolling with the chat.
Get rolling, Dee. I'll turn myself off again, and we'll just sort something out.
Yeah, slides are just slides, aren't they? Let me just see if I can improvise here. Won't be a moment. Okay. Andrew, can you just give me a nod that you can still see me?
Right.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Thank you. That's great. So what I'm going to do is grab my slides there. That's excellent. Okay. Okay, so look, I'm gonna kick things off. The topic is really, I think for me, a conversation between talent acquisition and when you are handing a new employee over to the hiring team, whether that's the hiring manager or that potentially could be the HR team. But for me, I'm really passionate, especially now, you know, in the midst of a pandemic, such a potent subject is psychological safety. It really got me thinking around the employee life cycle and the different stages that an employee goes through. So we have psychological safety in the candidate experience, but we also have psychological safety in probationary periods. And I'm really starting to question whether probationary periods are the best experience as an underlying point within the onboarding of a new employee. So for me, psychological safety is like oxygen. When it's in the room, we don't even notice it. The second it's gone, it's all we notice. The probationary period, I think for me, has an impact on psychological safety and is the missing link when designing your onboarding experience. There are ways to use comfort zones in the beginning phase of your life cycle to improve learning, increase retention, which is the holy grail, and build performance, leading to the successfully and swiftly passing through a probationary period. That's the euphoric destination for both, sitting on either side of that probationary period. And I know as talent acquisition leaders, you're certainly having conversations around negotiating what duration or what the probationary period would potentially look like for your new hire as you're placing them into the role. We all know that starting a new job is definitely a stressful situation. There are high hopes that it will work out. However, there's always a looming and persistent worry about losing the job. And I feel like this is escalated in the moment in time that we're living today. A mistake or an awkward conversation can make the heart of a new employee both pound, breath quicken, muscles tense, and beads of sweat form. This cascade of stress hormone production, physiological and psychological change is known as fight or flight. New employees come to you with optimism, but also with a survival mechanism. Let's say that one again. New employees come to you with optimism, but they also come to you with a survival mechanism. just like any other mammal, ready to react quickly to any threatening situation. A carefully orchestrated and thought out onboarding experience with a high degree of psychological safety can help your new employee fight that feeling of not being everything that you need them to be straight away and to avoid fleeing to safety. We've seen new employees go through the try before you buy, unpaid trials, if we can think back to that time, which often, thankfully, involves into a paid trial. And then it comes to the probationary period, which for me still reeks of congratulations, you got the job, but you're still on trial. The new employee feels optimistic and hopeful, and there are many reasons why they should be, but there is still an element of uncertainty and doubt hovering. So the real question, and I'd love to get your thoughts and comments in the chat box, is do we need probationary periods if we hire right? What are your thoughts and feelings on that today?
Your presentation, I'm just going to share it.
Excellent, thank you. Fantastic. So if you can just click down a little bit, Andrea, as we get some thoughts on, do we need probationary periods if we hire right?
Which one do you want it on, that one?
If you keep clicking down. Yeah, that one there. If you could, just the yellow one matches my dress. Thank you.
The yellow one.
Yes, please. And I'll just give you a, if I can say click, that would be great for the next slide.
All right. And you can see the comments in there.
I can. Okay, so James, often HR and legal recommendation, it's needed, absolutely, for compliance, risk management, it's the starting of the relationship, competitive, combative, yes. Absolutely, I think Adrian's certainly got a good point there. Are we really, starting off in an attractive type conversation when we've got a probationary period hovering? I like Chris is saying that I'm of two minds, opt in, opt out. That's great. So if you just click through the next slide there, Andrea. I agree. I'm certainly on both sides. I think I take a pretty pragmatic view on this. There is a need to safeguard ourselves as employers, of course. If an employee is not a good fit or does not perform, but perhaps there are better alternatives to what that looks like. So at the very least, by acknowledging the impact on the probationary period experience can have, and being aware that we have a duty of care, I think both as talent acquisition and HR, to ensure that the employee is waived of their probationary period as soon as possible. So when I say waive the probationary period, we certainly have the power as employees to actually make that decision a lot faster. So if I want to hear in the comments, have you done this? Have you heard of this? And if so, what was the reaction to the new employee when the probationary period was waived early? Yeah, Adriana, I like your question there. Maybe we can change the length of the probationary period. There's nothing set in stone that your probationary period needs to be 3 months, 6 months. We could make something that was a little bit more human, whether that to be 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Sophie, I like that. I've never seen a probationary period waived. And that's certainly the point that I'm trying to raise today. If HR has the decision-making power to actually waive it early. Why aren't we doing this a lot sooner if we're able to? That's great. Okay, if I just go through to my next slide. Okay, so I know many on the line have had several conversations on a daily basis with new employees. A new employee wants to form and maintain social relationships. One of the central desires of any human is to obtain social acceptance. And so many of our functions and activities are geared towards promoting that goal. So if we know that acceptance is key to belonging or creating that sense of belonging and reassurance, then it becomes obvious that the probationary period can stifle the feeling of acceptance. So how do we accelerate how soon a new employee feels accepted? What are the activities that you're doing to support this? How could you do more? So in your role today, I want to see a comment. What conversation or what activity could you take to feel empowered by heightening acceptance for your new hire or your new employee? Yeah, James, good point. Probation clauses are seldom challenged by candidates unless restraint of trade often gets raised. Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, Andrew, if you can click. All right, let's consider how a hungry person may grow hungrier when food is denied, but feels less hungry after a big meal. The same applies to feeling socially accepted. When someone receives feedback with a message of social acceptance, their motivation to build on those relationships is more likely to be satisfied, which should make them feel more at ease. So I'm going to get you to consider that top line again. How a hungry person may grow hungrier when food is denied, but feels less hungry after a big meal. How can we make our new hires and our new employees feel more at ease and more accepted? Click. Therefore, the conversations throughout the probationary period should be centered around three things. And if these are the three things that you take away today, then I've landed the conversation that I wanted to have. Acceptance, belonging, and reassurance. Andrea mentioned a little earlier that she always does like to have a cup of coffee. I think we had a comment on the sidebar that, there's phone calls at the 1 month, the 3 month, and the 6 month mark. Let's think about the conversations we can have if the recipe is around acceptance, belonging, and reassurance. So they are the three things that in that conversation you could or should be checking in. Have a think about your onboarding experience under those three categories. What conversations have you built around those three? It's up to us as leaders to instigate these conversations, as a new employee certainly is not going to reveal they're feeling unsafe. That only heightens the feeling of being under threat or feeling hungry, as we mentioned before. It's better to lead with acceptance rather than testing or trialing. This language can make or break the onboarding experience. So in those conversations, I really urge you to find new language when checking in on a new employer, being really positive around the onboarding conversation as well as the induction phase. And let's lose the language around probation. I think it just exacerbates things for the new employee. Excellent. I've just seen here, Michelle, I wanted to get rid of the terrible first day. Here's how they use the phone system. Absolutely. It should be about social acceptance. Your first day should be built on acceptance, belonging, and reassurance, so that person feels safe in their own body and presence, rather than learning how to answer the phone on day one. So absolutely love that comment. If you click, Andrea. Okay, it's also worth considering how when people feel that there is the slightest of likelihood that they may be rejected, their desire to find acceptance may be intensified. I'm not sure whether you've been in a situation before, but I think for me, if I feel under threat, I only feel more awkward and more under battle. So when checking in with your new employee, you should really lead with those types of questions to make sure that they're feeling accepted. Can you relate or remember a time when you've seen this in the workplace? So when someone's feeling the slightest of likelihood they may be rejected, how do they react? Do they freeze? Do they become awkward? What have you seen? They resign. Absolutely, Michelle. One thing that you could also take away from today is if there's something happening in an organization you're interacting with when it comes to retention, quite often organization goes straight to how can we improve the onboarding experience? They focus on things like basic job knowledge. But really, I think for me, there's a lot of insight there telling us that at times people that are feeling under threat, they're feeling judged, maybe we're not having the right conversations at the right time, they're off, they're fleeing to safety and they resign. Often, you not knowing when taking that resignation that they were feeling psychologically unsafe. So absolutely love that call out, Michelle. It's a massive responsibility as an employer. I can't talk enough about having a duty of care to a new employee to build that psychologically safe environment, even when they're on probation. You can click through. Wow, okay. Renee just remembered, Andrea, something about perfume. That went too quick, but that was a good one. As the employer, we're the decision makers, as I mentioned before, in the probationary period. Empathy is a big buzzword at the moment, but for me, empathy is the most important leadership capability when leading a new employee. I think if we can show empathy as a talent acquisition leader, if we're placing someone into a role, let's think on this one. Remember what it's like to start a new job. And I think this is where Andrea was going before. Remember what it was like to have a new leader, learn new things, build new relationships, and deliver in a new role, maybe in a new way, maybe in a new industry. What were your expectations and how were they met? Or maybe how weren't they met? If you can give me a real life example, what were your expectations as a new person and how were they met? Okay, it can feel like there is a monkey on your back telling you that you're being judged and wondering whether you're right for the role in the organisation. You can click through. A new employee, regardless of how excellent the onboarding has been, will count down the weeks and days until probationary is passed. As an employer, those weeks and days usually pass us by with no thought that the employee is even feeling that way. Who can connect to this? What conversations have you had where you've suddenly realized that a new employee or someone you've placed into a role is on countdown for their probationary period, when often the employer has absolutely no recollection around start dates and end of probationary period when it's so top of mind on that new employee? Is there anyone that has a story around that would like to share?
Dee, it's Andrea on Michelle's screen.
Right.
But what I can do is, if someone raises their hand, they can come on and tell their story if you'd like.
Let's try that. Who's going to be brave?
Who's raised their hand?
I can't. Oh, hang on. I'm now working two computers and having trouble.
Look at you go.
Yes. Look, there's a couple of things in Q&A if I can get to that.
Yeah, great.
Adrian, who is currently in the process of looking for work, is saying he thinks there's a disconnect in the relationship and imbalance of power with the employer not taking accountability.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we put so much of an emphasis, Adrian, on getting the right person in the right role at the right time. And we place that person, and often we prepare for what that arrival might look like. But I really do feel like there might be the opportunity there to build better relationships around the power. I quite often refer that to as sort of a one-sided dialogue within the onboarding process, fast forgetting that new employee comes with a set of skills, they know things, and how do we sort of allow them to have the power within the probationary period that, they're testing the organisation out as well to make sure that they're good enough for them and delivering on their promises through their EVP and the conversations they've had through the interview process. So I'm all with you. I think that imbalance of power is really interesting to explore. Okay, great. If you head on to the next slide there, Andrea.
Yep.
Cool. So today, I think if you can walk away from this workshop raising awareness that there is an impact on the probationary period on a new employee, to be able to do things proactively, even if it's in your own conversations and your own interactions, to proactively shake that fight or flight feeling and build meaningful relationships based on acceptance and empathy. What are your immediate thoughts and ideas on this? So if you can just use the sidebar there. In the role that you have today, what could you do differently to now breed acceptance and empathy for that person that you're interacting with that may be feeling that fight or flight mindset? Excellent. So Michelle, their manager should meet them at reception. Absolutely. That's, I think, not a nice to have, but a must have. Reassurance from the manager, James has just said. First up, coffee. Yeah, make the time. Have a morning tea with the team. Excellent. All of these things that we're coming up with here, depending on whether this sits in the realm of your responsibility or you're more of a bystander to this happening and you're checking in on someone you've placed in a role, ask the questions around if these things are happening. And if you go back to that reassurance, belonging, and acceptance, craft some good questions there that you can actually proactively engage this conversation with that person. Because remember, if they're feeling that way, they're probably going to tell you, no, everything's going well. I'm enjoying the role. I'm settling in nicely. But I wonder what conversation they're actually having at home with their loved ones, or if they're just internalizing these feelings of being judged because of the probationary term. Excellent. So we scoot through to the next slide. Really great comments there, guys. Keep them coming. What I've got here is just a couple of tips and tricks to be aware of around building psychologically safe probationary periods that will 100%, in my mind, improve the onboarding experience. So we go through to the first one there, Andrea. The first one is all about, and I found this quite interesting when I did a lot of research my end, is about building a safe learning zone. Quite often we talk about, get people out of their comfort zones. It's where the magic happens. But however, we're dealing with a new employee that has gone through a rigorous employment screening. They've been through interview process. They've won the job, which is excellent. But there's a lot of change and transition for a new employee when they're starting something new. So a new employee starts with apathy, and this means caution or concern. So they're a little bit wary with the new and how they can contribute. So I think it's that apprehension of starting something and changing a daily routine or a daily environment. As much as you make them feel welcomed and you do the right things, you do the coffee, you have the conversations, they certainly don't feel comfortable performance-wise straight away. Straight off the bat, being asked to perform outside of your comfort zone is definitely a no-no when on probationary period in my mind. But by increasing psychological safety, you move a new employee from an apathy zone to a comfort zone. And this is the sweet spot they should stay in throughout the onboarding period. So that's another good question you can ask your new employee. Have we got you in your comfort zone? Have we put you in a situation where we've put you outside of your comfort zone? Because that onboarding period, being in a comfort zone allows optimal learning, and that will impact sort of lasting deliverables. So have you considered learning zones when building an onboarding experience or talking to someone who's sitting in that onboarding experience? Is learning zones a thing that you consider for your new person? Yeah, great, Michelle. L&D often have one size fits all. Absolutely, there's not necessarily a bespoke. Yeah, that's good. Adrian said I had a manager set up meetings with key stakeholders the first 2 to 4 weeks in his role, and that was a really good experience. Excellent. If you click through again, Andrea. Okay, so sitting in a safe learning zone increases learning retention and supports the integration of new employees into the business as they're now learning, understanding, and contributing. Jot down these 3 things your onboarding experience should be centered around them. Okay, so it's learning retention, supporting integration, and understanding and contributing. Others who are, your colleagues or people that are around the new employee must also heighten their awareness that comfort zone equals learning zone. So again, that's a takeaway from today. Your new person or new employee should be in a comfort zone because that's going to provide optimal learning and increase that psychological safety that they're on their way, learning all of the things they need to learn in their new role. Keep them there for now. In your comfort zone, you feel safe, steady, and ready to learn. In the same parallel to increasing psychological safety, you can build performance accountability. And with this comfort, performance and deliverables will certainly take care of themselves as a new employee is resourceful and skilled. That is why you hired them in the first place. So I think that's another thing we need to really consider within the onboarding experience, why we hired that person in the first place. They are resourceful and they're very skilled. That's why they got the job. Click. Yep, next slide. Awesome. So the second thing that I wanted to take through as well is building acceptance through shared experiences. And most of these shared experiences have already been discussed on the sidebar. What could you do to share an experience human to human and build that connection even more so in the day-to-day conversations and the day-to-day activities? So numerous studies have shown that there's a clear link between meaningful relationships, social connectedness, and happiness, all built through psychological safety. Shared experiences heighten the experience for us as individuals personally, as they also hold the key to developing these deeper relationships that we're after. Deeper relationships then equal that psychological acceptance and then therefore safety. Through shared experience, your new hire can feel accepted, a sense of belonging, and that reassurance that we're after, that they're connected and they fit in the environment that they're now sitting in, which is new and it's a little bit sort of different to what they've experienced before. So if you push the button again, Michelle. Shared experiences don't have to be grand. They can be everyday moments, like attending a workshop together, inviting the new person to sit where you sit for lunch. I've been a new person the last sort of 6 to 12 months, and it's been quite interesting, the awkwardness that you can experience when you don't know where to sit for lunch. No one wants to be that person who's sitting by themselves. So I think that's another question we can ask. Have you got someone to sit with at lunch? Do you know where the bathrooms are? Do you know how to make a cup of coffee in the communal kitchen? Make sure that they do, but join them. Shared experiences can mean so much when it comes to that psychological safety. Ask your existing team to include your new employee in the everyday experiences that just happen in your organisation. I love Adriana has mentioned there a buddy system. It works really well. So you've got an identified buddy. They're going to take that person along their journey. But I feel like it goes wider than that. I think you need to tap a few key employees on the shoulder and actually let them know that we've got a new person joining. Can you check in? Because if you've got influential people within that environment, they can certainly make or break some of those experiences for your new person. Michelle, we used to send an email about where to eat. Excellent. The nearest supermarket, all the things around the office. Excellent. And it's so good to have that information. I think for me, it's now just taking it to the next level and taking ownership that if that information is out there, how do we make sure that that new person has someone to experience all of those things with, if not a group of people? Excellent. Next slide. Okay, so a shared experience allows them to feel really connected. And I think connected to their emotions, develop their ability to show emotional empathy and understand each other. So once we understand each other better, we feel safe in each other's company. It's really simple, this one, the shared experiences, because I know we're doing things in our daily interactions to make this happen. But I think if we can now look at this through the lens of what can we do activity-wise to create a sense of belonging? What could we do differently to amplify this experience in your workplace? So is there something that you can do tomorrow, next week, that maybe would heighten that sense of belonging through shared experiences? So I just want to hear a few comments in the sidebar there. Now, having these thoughts, what could you do differently? How could you check in on your new person? Tell Andrea not to have the discussion about wearing perfume on the second day. Okay, right. If you can think of, is there a new person in your office space, or have you just placed a new person into a role? What could you do immediately to check in on them when it comes to what shared experiences are you having and how could that make them feel? Yeah, Van, that's really good. A more cohesive plan rather than sort of piecemeal responsibilities for the HM or TA. That's great. I think this one here is probably something that we need to be more conscious and intentional with asking people to join in and checking in with them to see how that is settling in with them. Should be a plan that's agreed. Usually go and introduce myself. I love that, Josie. I think human connection is just so powerful when someone is new to a space. So just going up and actually introducing yourself, it's that power balance. I think Adrian mentioned a little earlier that a new person feels less power, and that person coming over, introducing themselves, equalizes that balance. Sort of level playing field, if you like, and makes that person feel more comfortable. So they go from that apathy zone to the comfort zone just by introducing yourself. So that's a really great one. Okay, if you click on, we've got our third how-to. And this one here, I think, really comes down to that comfort zone equals learning zone. It's all about building stability to perform and deliver. We know the new person can do things. That's why we hired them. But asking people to deliver more than they can without optimal learning can start to sort of, emphasize that fight or flight feeling. So that feeling of delivering as a new employee is gold. The moment contribution is felt, whether that's small or big, is a ding, ding, ding run on the board and can immediately impact the mindset and build confidence that that person has the goods to deliver in that environment. So one thing you could do is check in with your new employee and ask them, what runs on the board have you got already? What are you most proud of? And I think if you're a TA specialist and you're checking in on someone, ask them about what they're performing and delivering, because just speaking about what those runs on the board are builds confidence, and it builds psychological safety that they're actually there fulfilling a purpose and a need. The relationship between psychological safety and performance is often unspoken in conversation throughout the probationary period. We often hear comments of, it is what it is, they'll make it out the other side, or just push through it and you'll pass your probationary period. But as a new employee, you have a set of promises about what we bring to the organisation work-wise, and it's met with a clear set of expected deliverables to hit the ground running, regardless of what psychological state we're in. So I think that's another thing to consider. If someone's not feeling that belonging, acceptance, and reassurance, they are then feeling psychologically unsafe, and no one's performing in that zone. So regardless of whether there's expected deliverables and you need to hit the ground running, you can't do that when you're not psychologically safe. We're just not built that way as humans. So something that you could ask your new placement or your new employee is actually, what are you being asked to deliver performance-wise? And how is that making you feel? And I think it's a really good opportunity to actually look at, are they feeling judged? Are they feeling like they're on trial with their deliverables and their performance? And I think to be bold and brave to actually start to have the conversation around performance, are you feeling like you're in your comfort zone? Are you feeling as though you're learning what you need to learn? But most importantly, are you feeling psychologically safe? And hopefully by reaching out, that person might be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit judged when it comes to performance, and I'm not delivering the level that I usually deliver because of it. And when you're not delivering the way you used to deliver, it can make it worse, a bit like that hungry person we spoke about a little earlier. All right, if you just scoot through to the next slide. Yeah, I mean, I've summarized it there probably in a better way. Sadly, once stressed about a poor performance, it can be really difficult to repair. And I think Michelle mentioned it earlier. Quite often, and if I'm feeling stressed about my performance, it is difficult to repair. So I'm actually gracefully going to resign, or I'm going to go see whether the grass is greener on the other side. So a result of that stressed out about performance usually does result in a resignation at times. So by setting the new employee up to contribute in a really meaningful way, it increases their stability, it builds solid ground to perform on. There's a unique opportunity to increase stability throughout the onboarding. period, and in turn to retain valuable employees. As psychological safety has been shown to link with outcomes such as job satisfaction, commitment, performance, and trust. You can click through to the next slide. I think I've got a question to reflect on there. To build stability by having regular discussions, I think we mentioned that earlier on, about what's being exchanged in the employer and the employee relationship. So I think if you have some responsibilities to safeguard that, a new employer, I feel, will at times have heightened expectations on a new employee because they know things and they can deliver things. But we need to do that in a way that makes sense to the new employee. What runs were put on the board this week that can be celebrated as quick, impactful wins? This can help clarify goals, drive performance, encourage development conversations, and help new employees stabilize their nervous system. So if we can think about nervous system playing a role in performance and performance expectations, and if you see a manager being a little out of line around expectations in the first 6 months, I think it's really important to call it out. Are we being fair to that new person? They're in their first 6 months, they're on probation. It's a really stressful type of scenario to be in. So let's check in on performance. Can anyone relate to that? Do they have any comments and thoughts on performance expectations maybe being too big in the first 6 months? When people are expected to meet sales KPIs. Absolutely. I think that one there's really interesting, Michelle. To check in on that person, do they even understand what the sales KPIs are yet? Or has someone just barked them at them? Have we put them in an optimal learning zone within their comfort zone before building those expectations? Sophie, you've got a really good story to share there. You actually give people a lot of time to find themselves and develop in their position. Excellent example, and that's exactly where we need to be. Yeah, Adrian, no training to get there. There needs to be planned and structured approach, not throw it against the wall mentality. I'm not saying every organization has that mentality, but it's about being conscious and intentional in this space. Great. Our induction, if it's not right, how can you expect people to hit goals in their first 6 months? That's a great one. All right, we'll head over to our fourth how-to. We're almost at the end of the presentation, so hang in there. This one here is really something I'm passionate about, and it's about building the opportunity to be an expert. So remember when you were hiring and you had that hiring criteria of we need this, this, and this, and this, and this in that person, you were usually looking for a subject matter expert, you were looking for a specialist, or you were looking for a really strong leader. Your probationary period and your onboarding experience needs to really emphasize this. There's a reason you hired that new employee. They had the skills you were looking for. They brought experience in their backpack that the team or organization didn't have and they needed. Often the onboarding experience can be one-sided, with the new employee taking in all of the information to learn a new business and a new role, build relationships, find a place to eat lunch, all of those things. They are on probation and quickly forget that it's about them too. Next slide. Knowing a new hire is super excited to win the job, and I think we can all connect to that. People get really excited to get the job after all of the interviews, and they bring all their experience to a new environment. It's important to remember that you hired an expert in something, and it's important to create scenarios or situations where the new employee can bring what they've got. They've been building their backpack and all of their experiences for years. So I think it's our responsibility to check in with that. Are you being given opportunities where you feel like you can share your experience and your wealth of knowledge? So that's a great question to ask if you're checking in on someone. Have your new employee share their story. Create a social space for this to happen and make it sort of take the formality out of it. Make it really casual and comfortable that someone can tell you, you know, these are all the things that I've done and this is who I am as a person. They've actually gone through an interview process. Keep it light, but make sure it happens. It can increase the fear of not being accepted or appreciated if it's not even important for people to ask, who are you, what have you done, and what do you bring to the organisation? But I think the biggest one there is to keep this conversation light. All right, if we click on to the next one. Cool. When collaborating with new employees, remember they're not just there to listen and learn. Quite often we can do this without even knowing that we're doing this, but you know, they know things, and as I mentioned before, they know really good things. That's why they got the job. So just be aware that, lead with that empathy. Remember what it's like to be new, sitting in a meeting, all existing employees, guns blazing, in the thick of their work here. You know things, and you want to show you have the goods to support and stay here. Don't wait for the new employee to feel as if they have to voice up or they have to sort of, I don't know, reach up for their turn to actually say an opinion or state something that they, you know, want to say. Make it happen for them. So just something to reflect on as you leave the conversation today is having to think of what activities you can pencil in to make this happen. And it's all about making that expert that you hired have a voice, and for people to listen and for people to want to listen. Yeah? Okay, if you click on to the next slide, I've only got a few more. I think this one's a big one. I think by people asking, what do you think, is a huge compliment for a new person. A small question with a huge amount of reassurance attached to it. Again, reassurance that you want to know what they know, that the new employee is sitting here for a very good reason, and that is to make us better. You know, after you ask that question, the most important thing is to actively listen after that question. Pay attention, ask more curious questions. It's the new employee's time to shine or to show their expert, to build their confidence and the confidence that you have in them as well. All right, and we're on to our last how-to, and I'll race through this because I'm conscious of time. This one here is my most exciting how-to, and there's going to be some more information come out off the back of this. But when we spoke about waiving the probationary period early, whether we had done that or whether we'd heard of this happening before, build a massive moment that matters, and it's about passing probation. Now that your awareness is raised that the probationary period has an impact of a new employee's psychological safety and the onboarding experience, you have the complete freedom to waive a probationary period. If you're in HR, that's your responsibility, or as a TA check-in, ask the question. If this person's performing and they're a cultural fit, ask the question, when are you going to waive the probationary period? If you don't see any alarming risks of doing so, it's there to protect the business, yes, we get that. But if there's a limited risk around that person, put the psychological safety of your new employee first and waive it. I guarantee that person will be so appreciative of that if you surprise and delight them by waiving their probationary period. On to the next one. Cool. If you have a 6-month probationary period, it's been a long and tiresome process for a new employee to prove themselves over 24 weeks. Yes, they also have many great experiences provided in that 24 weeks as well. However, just take a moment to think about what we were doing 24 weeks ago. It's a long time. So the first thing to improve the onboarding experience to your new employee is to pass that time early. It's a huge moment that matters, maybe not to you, but to them. The other thing you can do if you're negotiating contracts and terms and conditions for your new person or new placement is actually ask, probationary period, you're feeling really good about this person. Should we make it 3 months rather than 6 months? So we have the power to start that conversation for our new person's benefit and psychological safety. We scoot on to the last slide. It is, yeah. Make a big deal. Dance in the moment. If someone passes probation and you're aware that they've been counting down, celebrate that. It will be remembered for all of the right reasons. So that's it from me. I am starting to, create a little bit of a movement in this space. So if anyone's wanting to have conversations after the event, please reach out. There's so many things we could be doing to better this experience and hopefully change the language and the experience around probationary periods. So thanks, Andrea, for having me, and thanks for bearing with me with my presentation. Your microphone's off, Andrea.
Go on, hang on. Right, thanks, Dee. This is why I like to sing, because I think this is like the old-fashioned.
The microphone there.
It's a gorgeous one. Thank you, Dee, very much for that. There were some really valid points raised in the whole onboarding piece. So I hope people are going to take something away from that. I'm just going to turn the presentation off at the moment while we get Michael Delaney sorted. But thank you very much. And I'm just going to stop for 2 seconds, everyone, or 2 minutes, and then we'll come back online again.
Great. See you later. Have a good afternoon.